The doorbell rang just as the kettle clicked off. I had one hand on the handle, the other on a mug, when Frank's voice drifted from the hallway, low and wary. "Bev, there's a package." By the time I reached him, he'd set a brown carton on the coffee table. No return address. No card. A cheap strip of tape pressed crooked along the top like a mouth trying not to speak. I leaned in, already picturing a scented candle or a lopsided handmade frame like the ones my daughter used to give me years ago. That thought was so soft it made my chest ache. Then I noticed the pinprick holes along the sides. Neat, spaced, purposeful. Frank put 2 fingers lightly on my wrist. His whisper was a thread. "Don't open it. Can't you see?" We both heard it then. A dry rustle, a faint hiss, something sliding against cardboard. The room shrank to the size of that box. The kettle's steam faded into a ghost of heat against the tiles. I set the mug down so carefully you'd think the porcelain could shatter the air. And under it all, a sickening knowledge arrived and sat beside me like an old friend. Rachel sent this. On Mother's Day. When Rachel was 8, she loved boxes. Shoe boxes, cereal boxes, the little tin that once held tea bags. She would fill them with drawings of the 3 of us holding hands, with paper rings with notes written in her wobbly hand. Best mom in the world. She'd present them with ceremony, chin tipped up, as if she were giving me a treasure chest. I kept them stacked in my closet like nesting dolls of joy. On nights when she slept with a forehead still damp from bath water and the house smelled faintly of lavender soap, I'd open one and take in the crayon sunbursts. My world felt bright and very simple. Years folded. The drawings stopped, replaced by high school schedules, then college brochures. Frank lost his job at the factory during the second wave of layoffs, and I took extra hours at the school office. We learned to stretch soup, to patch elbows, to laugh anyway. When Rachel fell in love with Eli, sleek watch, easy grin, ambition like cologne, you couldn't tell her anything. She saw a man on the rise. I saw someone who lived on momentum and borrowed shine. We paid for the wedding, the dress, the flowers, the late-night taco truck, because everyone does that now, Mom. We told ourselves it was a gift, not a rope. After the vows, the phone calls began. A missed rent payment here, an emergency dental bill there. Eli's latest venture so close to launch. Every ask came with urgency, lacquered over with guilt. "You wouldn't let your grandkids go without, right?" Rachel would say, eyes glossy, voice softened at the edges like a well-practiced hymn. We sent money. We said yes. And each yes set a new table where we were expected to serve ourselves last. The cracks widened in small daily ways. A credit card charge labeled Reptile Den appeared one month. I asked Frank about it, and he assumed it was a silly toy for the kids. We shrugged and moved on. But even then, somewhere under the shrug, I was cataloging our mistakes. I just didn't have the courage to lay them out. And then came the week before Mother's Day, when Rachel arrived unannounced with a manila envelope and a smile that was all teeth. "It's time we talked about the inheritance, Mom." The word inheritance felt obscene in daylight. Frank stepped from the den with an unpaid electric bill in his hand. My folded towels made careful stacks on the table. "Because you're fine," Rachel went on. "You have enough for later. We have needs now. Dylan's tuition. Eli's seed round. I mean, what's the point of money if it doesn't help family?" I glanced at her new nails, the designer bag with its soft leather mouth gaping open, the limited edition sneakers on Eli's feet. The air felt drier than winter. "Because it's not yours," I said. "It's ours. For our old bones and quiet mornings. That's what we worked for." Frank's mug slipped and shattered. An accident. A small sharp punctuation that made us all blink. Rachel flinched, then lifted her chin. "You'll regret this when you're sick and you need me." She said it like a promise, not a warning. And I understood in that instant that our daughter had learned to keep love inside the box of what it could buy, and we had helped build it. A week later, Mother's Day arrived and the box on our coffee table curled its breathing into our house like a secret. "Step back, ma'am. Please." Officer Ramirez's uniform was the blue of storm water. He stood between us and the package, hand hovering near his radio. Frank had already dragged the rug aside, as if a thin layer of wool could stop whatever would jump. The house smelled like coffee and dust. The kettle, long cooled, sat like a closed eye. "We heard hissing," Frank said. "And the holes." "For air," the officer murmured, his mouth tightening. When animal control arrived, the specialist, a calm man named Mike with steady eyes and thick gloves, knelt and cut the tape with slow, decisive snips. His scissors made a bird-like click with each squeeze. I focused on the sound to keep my pulse from clawing at my throat. The flaps peeled open. A ribbon of pale orange and cream uncoiled. A corn snake, 3 feet of living muscle, tongue tasting the air in quick scripts. "Non-venomous," Mike said. "But this isn't a prank you put in the mail. This is intimidation." Frank's hand found mine and squeezed. The relief of non-venomous was thin as paper. The intention felt thick enough to choke on. Officer Ramirez turned to me, pen ready. "Do you have any idea who might have sent it?" I thought of the reptile den charge. The quick, practiced tilt of Rachel's head when she lied. The way Eli's smile never reached his eyes. "I'm not sure," I said. It wasn't entirely untrue. If a person becomes a stranger in front of you slowly, which version of them do you accuse? They took the snake away, its body looping itself into new arrangements inside a clear carrier as if it were writing the word enough, in a language I didn't speak. When the door closed and the house quieted, the box remained like a spent match in the middle of the table. My eyes stung unexpectedly. "It used to be drawings," I said to no one at all. Frank leaned in, forehead touching temple, the old familiar anchor. "Bev, we don't have to keep living like this." He meant the fear. He meant the yes. He meant the story where our daughter kept us on a leash and called it love. The kettle caught its second wind and rattled on the burner, and I realized my hands were shaking. I went to the phone and called Rachel. She answered in a voice dipped in syrup. "Hi, Mom. How was your?" I let the silence sit between us until I heard it. Laughter in the background, a low male chuckle. Amusement, not surprise. "I received a package today," I said. "A beet. The kind of beet that shows its teeth." "Oh? What kind of package?" "A box. With breathing holes. Another beet longer. Then, I have no idea what you're talking about." Behind her, the laugh again. "Eli." The sound slid up my spine like ice. "We won't be speaking for a while," I said. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means no more money. No more emergencies. No more using my love as a debit card." Her tone shifted, the mask slipped. "You're punishing me? For something I didn't do? For everything you have done? And for what you didn't do just now, care?" "Fine," she snapped. "But don't expect to see Dylan or Maisie again. Ever." She had used that line before, a rusty key she kept jamming at a door she assumed would always open. "If you're the kind of mother who uses children as bargaining chips," I said, "perhaps it's better they spend less time learning that from you." Silence. A stunned inhale. Then the dead, fast buzz of a call ended. My palm tingled where the phone had been. I set it down and wrapped both hands around the cooling mug. It had a hairline crack I'd never noticed, so thin you had to tilt it into the right light to see. It reminded me of us, still holding but changed. They came the next morning, tires hissing on the driveway like the box's last breath. Rachel stood on the porch in a blazer expensive enough to make a statement and tight enough to make her look uncomfortable in her own body. Eli hovered behind her, arms folded, jaw set. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past hello. Frank moved beside me, large and quiet. "We already did," I replied. "You can't just cut us off like this," she said. It was a joke. A stupid birthday prank. "Mother's Day," I said. Whatever. It wasn't even dangerous. You mailed a live animal to my home, Rachel. That's not a prank. That's a message. Eli's smile sharpened. You're overreacting, Beverly. The kids need things. Rent is due. You've got retirement money sitting there gathering dust. Frank's laugh was a single breath. It's sitting there because we earned it. 35 years of before sunrise shifts and careful lists. That money is our piece, not your plan B. Rachel's eyes flashed. For a second, the child I'd tucked into bed looked out from behind the woman she'd become. You'll regret this when you need me, she said again, softer. Sounded like habit more than threat. If you have to be paid to care for me, I said, then I won't need you. Not like that. Her mouth opened, the words didn't come. It was the pause I'd been praying for without knowing it. The pause where she ran out of script. You're serious, she whispered. Completely, I said. They left with the offended stiffness of people told the rules had changed and no one consulted them. When the door shut, my heart was stuttering, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar rush of choosing myself and not apologizing after. That evening, the house settled into a quiet I had forgotten how to trust. The clock ticked. The news murmured. Somewhere a neighborhood dog barked once like punctuation. Frank and I ate on the porch, the honeysuckle throwing sweetness into the cooling air. Tomorrow, I said, I'm calling Linda. Linda Morrison had helped us with our wills, with the paperwork when my mother passed, with the polite architecture of a life. When I told her about the box, she didn't flinch. She leaned forward. Her office smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper, the scent of order. I laid everything out. The police report number, the animal control receipt, the credit card charges that bloomed like weeds, the threats spun as care. As I spoke, the shame that had clung to my ribs like a wet shirt began to loosen. Linda tapped the edge of her legal pad. This isn't just dependency, Beverly. It's control. We're going to put up walls that hold. I want a trust for Dylan and Maisie, I said. Education only. No cash to pass through Rachel or Eli. And remove Rachel from everything else, house, retirement, bonds. Every key she's had to our life? Change the lock. Done, Linda said. And a protective order? I hesitated. The old reflex to keep family business inside the walls waking like a sore muscle. Will that make things worse? Without a boundary, you're a target, she said gently. With one, you're a citizen. Frank slid his hand across the table and rested it on the back of my wrist. A simple weight. Home. Let's file it, I said. We spent 2 hours signing, initialing, notarizing. Each time my pen met paper, something recalibrated inside me. I thought of the box on our coffee table, the one Mike had lifted the snake from, and how empty it looked afterward, as if it had been feeding on more than air. That box had carried one message. The stack of documents on Linda's desk carried another. No. On our way out, Linda paused. One more thing, she said. Change your passwords. Close the card Rachel's had access to. Alert the bank to block new cards without in-person confirmation. I want you boring in every way that matters. Boring as a fortress, I thought. Boring as a locked gate. We drove home in a gentle rain that made the world look honest. At a red light, Frank said, almost to himself, she'll push back. I know, I said. But this time there's nowhere for her to push me to. It didn't take long. By the end of the week, I had 3 fraud alerts from the bank, each an attempt to add a card to our account. All blocked. Eli called Frank first. He always tried the man-to-man angle before coming through me. This is ridiculous, he said. I was at the hardware store. Our card declined. Embarrassing, Frank. You understand? I do, Frank said and hung up. Rachel texted me a photo of Dylan holding a soccer ball. Grass stains bright on his knees. No message. Just the picture weaponized. I put my phone face down on the table and whispered to the kitchen air. I'm not paying ransom for a child's smile. The next morning, a series of frantic messages arrived. The rent transfer hadn't gone through. The landlord had served notice. Rachel's "we need to talk" moved from demand to demand with tears to blame, like a weather system spinning in place. I answered only once. We've provided your emergency funds for years. Today I'm giving you something else. A boundary. It won't bounce. She didn't reply. A week after that they arrived again. No screech of tires this time, no swagger. Rachel looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Eli stood with his arms crossed, but it felt more like he was holding himself up than blocking anything. You win, Rachel said without preamble. Is that what you want to hear? I'm not keeping score, I said. That's exactly what you're doing, she snapped, then deflated. I can't believe you do this to your daughter. I can, I said quietly, because it's the first time I'm doing something for myself. She glanced past me into the hallway. A photo of her at 8 hung there. Gap teeth, hair in barrettes shaped like strawberries, cheeks pink from running through the sprinkler. For a second Rachel stepped closer as if pulled. Then Eli shifted and the moment fell. Fine, she said. Congratulations on being the kind of mother who chooses money over family. No, I said. I'm being the kind of mother who refuses to confuse money with love. Frank didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His presence beside me was its own language. We, not I. They left. The door closed on a soft exhale. I leaned my forehead against the wood for a long, cool minute. That afternoon, I walked into our bedroom and pulled the plastic storage bin from the top shelf of the closet. Inside were the boxes I'd saved. Shoeboxes full of crayon suns and stick figures holding hands, a cereal box painted blue with a wonky heart on the lid, a small tin that once held peppermint tea. My favorite sat on top. A shoebox wrapped in Easter paper, edges scuffed, lid bow long gone. On the inside of the top, in purple marker, Rachel had written, "Open when you're sad." I opened it. Inside was a drawing of a house with 3 windows, a slant-roof triangle in green crayon. 3 stick figures waved from the yard, our names in balloon letters over our heads. The sun occupied a corner, throwing yellow spokes across the page. I set the drawing on the bedspread and cried in the quiet way older women do, without drama, like rain soaking a field. The next day, I went to the bank and opened an education trust in Dylan and Maisie's names. Disbursements only to accredited schools upon proof of enrollment. Funds held by an independent trustee. No access by parents. It felt like packing lunches for a future I wasn't sure I'd be invited to, and doing it anyway. Word got around the neighborhood not about the snake. No one outside the polite radius of paperwork knew that, but about the fact that we'd finally told Rachel no. People stopped me at the mailbox, in the grocery store, at church. I wish I had your courage, one woman said. My son, well, we give until there's nothing left of us. I didn't feel brave. I felt like a tired person who had sat down and, for the first time in a long time, refused to stand back up just because someone else snapped their fingers. 3 months passed. Summer laid itself like a warm hand on our shoulders. We ate on the porch most evenings and learned how to hold this improved quiet without bracing for the next crash. Then on a Wednesday that smelled like tomato vines and cut grass, the doorbell rang again. I opened the door to find a padded mailer on the step. No return address, but the handwriting on the label tugged at something deep, a familiar slant. My heart beat a staccato against my ribs. I brought it inside. Frank raised an eyebrow. Another box? A softer one, I said. He reached for my wrist the way he had on Mother's Day. The gesture was muscle memory now, a shared code. This time I covered his hand with mine. It's from Maisie, I said, though I didn't know it. I felt it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a small cardboard box covered in stickers. Rainbows, stars, a cartoon cat. The lid was held by a single strip of washi tape patterned with tiny strawberries. It wasn't the careful, clean tape of intimidation. It was the messy enthusiasm of a child who loves a new roll of sticky paper. She used to love strawberries, I murmured. The barrettes. Frank smiled. She still does. She just forgets sometimes. Under the lid was a note in a wobbly hand. To Grandma. Mom says we can't come over, but Dad said we can send this. Happy late Mother's Day. From Maisie and Dylan, but he didn't want to write. The grammar, the honesty undid me. Below the note was a drawing. A house, 3 windows, a slant roof triangle. 2 small figures with stick legs. One taller one with curly hair that, if you squinted, could be mine. The sun again throwing its yellow spokes. A crayon strawberry floated over the yard like a balloon. We stood in the kitchen and let our ribs expand around this small mercy. You going to write back? Frank asked. I'm going to write to them, I said. And to the school so the trust can send what it needs when it's time. And to Linda to make sure everything's set. And then, I'm going to sit on the porch and drink my tea hot. That evening, my tea warm all the way down, I pulled one of the old boxes from the closet, the Easter paper one with open when you're sad. I set Maisie's box on top. 2 boxes 30 years apart, holding love like a matched set. The snake's box would never come back into this house. I finally understood Frank's whisper that morning. Don't open it. Can't you see? He wasn't just talking about the cardboard. He was warning me about the pattern. Seeing, I learned, is not about eyesight. It's about refusing to look away when what you see is ugly, and still choosing something better for yourself. A late visit. In September, I stood in the aisle of the hardware store, examining hinges to replace the squeaky ones on the laundry room door. When I felt someone beside me, I turned and found Dylan, thinner, taller, hair flopping into his eyes. He lifted a hand in a shy wave. Mom doesn't know I'm here, he said. But I wanted to say hi. I smiled without exploding into plans or pleas. The urge to scoop him up was a physical thing. I kept my arms at my sides and gave him the dignity of coming as a person, not a pet. You still like blue Gatorade? I asked because I remembered stupid details like that. Yeah, he said and grinned. Maisie too. Mom says it's all dye, but bring her by after school, I said, and the words surprised me with how gentle they sounded. We'll sit on the porch. No money will change hands. Just lemonade, the cheap kind that makes your mouth forget it's sad. He ducked his head. I'll ask. He didn't. Not that day. But a week later a teacher called, asking to confirm the trust's details. I answered questions. I didn't push. Some bridges get built by engineers. Some are made of small, repeated waves. A quiet reckoning. In October, Rachel sent me a message at 2:13 a.m. A time of night when truths wobble free of their cages. The text was long and wandering, like a person walking a neighborhood looking for the right house. Maybe you're right about boundaries. Maybe I'm a terrible person. Maybe you turned me into one. Maybe I learned it somewhere else. I don't know. I'm tired. I stared at the screen for a long while. Then I typed, boundaries aren't punishment, Rachel. They're instructions for where love can live. I didn't send it. I deleted it and wrote instead, the trust is set. The door is too in its way. Do better for yourself and for them. That's all. 2 dots, then nothing. Some silences are cruel. Some are respectful. I chose to believe this one was the latter, if only so I could sleep. The simple revenge. People expect revenge to look like a slammed door or a dramatic speech in a crowded room. Mine looked like a neat stack of legal documents in a lemon-scented office and a hot cup of tea sipped to the bottom. It looked like telling the bank no in firm, boring ways. It looked like refusing to unwrap threats disguised as gifts. It looked like taking back the story of the boxes. Because in the end, that's what this was. A story of boxes. The ones that held crayon suns. The one that held a snake. The one Maisie decorated with stickers. The invisible boxes we build around our hearts. The good, breathable kind. And the cruel, airless kind other people try to fold us into. If you're reading this and your love has been packed and shipped to you with a hiss, hear me. You are allowed to refuse delivery. You are allowed to mark it return to sender. And keep the porch light on for something worth opening. Final scene: the porch, the drawing, the day. On a Sunday morning washed clean by rain, I took Maisie's drawing from its place of honor on the mantel and set it beside Rachel's old one on the porch table. The paper edges lifted in the breeze like they might fly. The world smelled like wet stone and coffee and the clean edge after a storm. Frank stepped out, mug in hand. "You see them?" he asked, nodding toward the yard. A pair of robins hopped under the hydrangeas, something in their mouths I couldn't quite make out, tight and purposeful. "Worms," I said. "No," he grinned. "Breakfast and a home renovation. 2 birds, one, never mind." He sat. We didn't talk about Rachel, or what she would do next. We didn't plan the future like it would behave. We didn't make bargains with any god who would listen. We just sat and let the morning put its hands on our shoulders. On the table, 2 houses, one drawn 30 years ago by a girl with strawberry barrettes, one drawn this year by a girl with strawberry stickers, caught the sun and reflected it back. The box on Mother's Day had carried a hiss and a threat. But the last box I opened carried a different message in a child's carelessly careful loops. To Grandma. I could finally hear it over the old noise. Some gifts you never open. Some you open and close carefully to keep their air sweet. Some you lay beside one another and call it a lineage. And if anyone ever presses a box into your hands with a smile too tight, if they try to tell you love comes with holes punched for breathing, and you should be grateful for the air, listen for the whisper. You'll hear it if you've learned to see. Don't open it. Can't you see? I can now. And once you see, it's easier to choose.